everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, because if we're speaking dispatch, hey, everybody, you know what? We're talking to you. And if we're talking to you, why don't you tell your friends, hey, you know what? They're talking to us. We should all be listening. Everybody in the dispatch world should be listening. And you're going to see how much you miss out by not watching, by watching this episode right now. So joining us today is John over there. How goes it, John?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome.
Welcome. And there's Joe down there. Hi, Joe. How are you today?
Doing great. Go Phillies.
Oh, Lord have mercy. And then we have a very special guest. We got our returning champion, Don Jones, is back with us again. Don, how's everything going in your part of the world?
Real quick, Joe, go Giants.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're going to get a bit of a thing going on here. So we have some viewer-supplied questions that people have.
Do you have any other questions for me, Counsel?
Questions that people have submitted these questions, and we're going to answer them for them. I'm not going to say anybody's names or anything like that, but we can at least read the question to you, and you can give us their answer because people are kind of curious. So let me read you this one. This is somebody submitted this question. I really think this would be a cool job, but the downside seems so much, you know, working with so many angry people, long hours, holidays. Is it really worth it? What do you think? Who wants to handle that one?
I'll go first. What job do you get where you don't work with angry people?
Well, I think they were talking about like callers and stuff like that. I think.
Well, and I think a majority of dispatchers will tell you that that's okay. Like you can kind of deal with the callers, and you know, we give you techniques. A lot of it's just the cumulative aspect of the job, right?
Yeah.
Taking call after call after call, or you know, no matter how many years you've been in the industry, you've had your worst call on whatever day that was. And now every day after that, you're thinking that next call could trump that worst call, which whatever that was for you, there's a worst call. I think the biggest thing in this industry, and I think it's like this, quite frankly, in a lot of industries, it's the internal stuff. Yeah. Like you're dealing with this person that you may or may not like from day to day, but that's like that in any industry, right? I mean, you just have to kind of work through it, and the hours are long. You know, we pay our people pretty well, but you gotta have the support system on the back end. But I don't think that's unique to 911. I think that's everywhere. I think we get a bad rap.
Yeah, I think we do. And when this person asked the question, they'd been on the job less than 2 months. And we're kind of like, it just seems really negative, and it seems really like nobody's happy doing this job. And why should I stay here? And I'm like, her final question to me was, is it worth the ride? Is it worth the ride of doing this training and all this stuff to stay in this job? And I'm telling her, absolutely, it's worth it. Yeah. Just knowing the difference you're making in your society. I mean, that's a big thing you should be proud of. So how about John or Joe? You guys got an answer to this poor lady's question?
I do. I think absolutely. You're on this screen. I don't know Don, John, or Doug's exact experience years, but I'll bet you we're pushing 100 years of service between the four of us. Yeah. And there's a reason that people stay in this job as long as what we have. And it's because you truly get to make a difference. And I know that sounds like cliche or anything like that, but you can choose how hard you want to work in 911 on every single phone call and on every single radio transmission. And if you tell yourself, I want this job to be one that I'm going to succeed at, and I'm going to put everything into it because I want to get as much out of it as possible, you're going to be able to. You may not be able to go to every training thing, but trainings are now starting to become available to you through virtual training or through our videos or whatever. And you can start to build your career. And as Doug likes to say in his classes, leave a legacy in what you do. Yeah. And not many jobs really offer you the number of opportunities that 911 dispatchers are truly granted. So I think it's more than worth it.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. That's good stuff. All right, Joe.
I just think it's fun telling people where to go.
Well,
you know, I mean, what job can you do that? I mean, even a boss doesn't order their employees, well, shouldn't order their employees around, but you know, dispatchers are one, officer one, go here, fire rescue engine, go there. And it's fun just being under the headset, and to me, just managing everything and turning that complex situation and just handling it with ease. Obviously that comes with time and experience.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, I just think going back what Don said, it's just kind of like fun.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think the good thing I try to tell people is you're involved with so many cool things that you don't even think about. I mean, I worked during, you know, Rodney King and OJ Simpson and all these people. And it's like, it's cool to say, I was part of that. It's like, I was involved in some of these things. And it's like, that's a cool thing to kind of, if you want to be involved in your community and involved in your business and stuff like that, that's so cool about that, where a lot of people in other jobs don't get that experience. They get to watch it on TV going, I guess that was something.
I would also add, Doug, that we're not we're not going away. In most places, 911 dispatchers aren't getting laid off. Most places are still hiring and trying to fill. Maybe there's those one centers out there that maybe did a layoff, but your job is pretty secure for the most part. You got a decent retirement with public job most of the time, not always, but you know, you get what you put in, and that's what I would stress.
Don, are you guys hiring at your place? So, I mean, and I thought, Joe, you said you're hiring, right?
We are, yes. We're currently.
Don, you guys are hiring over there?
Yeah, yes.
Everybody's hiring. Every place I've been to lately in the last couple of weeks have been hiring like crazy, and they're frustrated. They don't know how to get people. And my thing is, once you get people like that person I was just referring to on this question, she's been on 2 months and she's already filling that. That shouldn't be the case. You should be feeling excited about the job. And my God, I'm so happy to have had this experience and that kind of thing. So, I mean,
I think that person needs to listen to a previous podcast. We talk about culture and organizational change and that kind of thing.
Well, she was one of the people that didn't even know about this podcast. So I was like, I got her all like settled up on this thing. So I was like, here's what you need to do. So I'm like, because we give pretty good answers. And I'm like, you should be listening. And she's like, I never heard of it before. And I'm like, now you have and tell your friends. So everybody gets this stuff. So, all right. So this is kind of a question that this was somebody been on a while and was feeling a little, you know, kind of a thing out there. They said, what would you suggest as a way to get myself training since the stuff we're offered isn't much and really doesn't prepare us to handle many calls? How would they go out and get their own kind of training, or what should they do? I told them personally, my thing was to do research, go get a book, go listen to a podcast, go do a seminar, something to help yourself building that investment in yourself out there. I mean, that's what I always talk about. So what do you guys think?
I would also encourage most CAD systems before the call goes into accept mode. Maybe your CAD does not have this capability, but I know our CAD system, if we just enter a generic address that does not verify, there's a few more steps we have to do to get the call to go independent. And I always tell them, since we do emergency medical, fire, and police dispatch, that if you want to practice at that software and do something during downtime, you can abandon the call without it going independent and still practice by asking yourself, what if? If you're not creative, pull up Google and search 911 dispatcher, and there'll be all sorts of examples. And then ask yourself, how do I do that? You know, and you could practice during downtime. So that when people say that they don't offer training and don't teach us, I would encourage them to start teaching themselves.
Yeah, I'm always telling them, research on your own. Don't wait for somebody to give it to you. You go get it. I mean, that's important to do that kind of stuff. I mean, what about you, Joe or John? What do you think?
The one thing that came to my mind was we talked in the past about local chapters. Just go to their own websites. And again, it's going on your own and seeing, is anything coming to my town that I'm just not aware of? And whether I can be sponsored by the agency and do it, or if I have to take leave. There was a class just actually earlier this month that was out of state. I was happy that my agency sponsored me, but if not, like, I really wanted to go to it. And actually, I only saw it posted on a Facebook group.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow. So even some of another outlet is not just going to the local chapter online, but look on Facebook. You just never know what's going to be posted on there. And I know there are different groups. I'm not going to get into all that, but sometimes if you just search the photos, you can see, scrolling past the memes, of course, some announcements of good training opportunities. And that's where I came across this one. It was fantastic.
And that's the thing. I think you have to kind of do some investment in yourself and go find these things. And I've taught classes before where, this is a long time ago, but where I've taught classes where somebody's in the classes that came up and said, I paid for this class myself. My agency didn't send me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so great that you're so willing to invest in your own success. That's so great out there. So what about you, Don? What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think all those answers are right. What I would say, you know, the podcast thing I think is great. I think, you know, doing scenario-based training I think is awesome. Everything is virtual now. There's so many classes that you could take virtually. Like in California, even the state has some 2-hour, 4-hour virtual trainings you can do. I mean, there's plenty of resources out there, but I agree. You have to put in the effort. It's not just going to land in your lap. You got to put yourself out there. And unfortunately, hopefully agencies are doing that for you, but sometimes they're not.
That's the thing. And since I know you're connected to Nina, I mean, you were the president of Nina, Cal Nina. Do you guys at Nina, do you know if Nina offers like free classes or online stuff or something like that? I have no idea. Do they?
There's some potential out there. I think that they're in the process of moving more virtual as well.
I see. Okay.
To get it out there. I mean, obviously, you know, Nina is an organization that does make money in a sense, right? But their ultimate goal is for the dispatchers. So they're doing everything they can to, I know at Cal Nina, actually, we had a Nina class that was sponsored that was free for all attendees. And it was post certified for anybody in California. So it's a little bit of both, but.
And I know that some of the websites like Nina and APCO and those things, they have resources on there for you to look at and download and do whatever. I mean, magazines, articles, all that stuff. It just, when I hear people talk like these questions, I'm thinking, you're not looking for it. You're wanting somebody to hand it to you and say, here's the training you should want. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. I mean, I
have one other thing to add. The other way to find training is through the teletypes, where agencies will send administrative messages and just send it through those postings. Now, granted, if you're not at the computer, the time the teletype comes across, you may miss it. But hey, maybe just put a basket that anytime an administrative message come across it announces some local training, put it in a basket, and that way everyone at the center can at least look at it, browse to it.
Decide the other one,
yeah. And the other thing is what Don said about Nina going virtual is look at those organizations that offer scholarships, because they will actually pay a full tuition, including sometimes, depending upon what it is, travel to and from these, especially on a national level. That becomes free, and then you're just either taking your own leave and using, incidentals, but I mean, it's out there.
You know, one of the other things I try to talk about with classes that I teach right now is the fact that you have resources sitting right in front of you. There are people that have 30, 40 years of experience sitting right there on your floor. And if you choose not to talk to them and benefit from their experiences, you're crazy. I mean, it's like people are sitting there, and I'll give you a quick example. I was working at one of the comm centers. I couldn't figure out how to run this darn Canadian plate. It came out and I couldn't figure it out. And I asked somebody on the floor if they knew how to do it. She said, yes. She pulls out this big old binder with all this stuff in it. And she gives me this piece of paper. It says how to read it. And so I did. And I'm like, oh my God, give me a copy of that thing. And she was like, okay. And I'm like, what are you gonna do with that big old book when you retire, that big old cheater book you have? And she goes, probably just throw it away. And I'm like, no, we want it all. I want the whole damn thing, because that's over 30 years of experience. She's been collecting this stuff. And if you don't choose to ask that person, can I have this or share this with me or whatever, you're missing out on a great opportunity for experience. Like Joe said, we have a lot of experience sitting right here. I mean, I've got 30. I mean, how many do you have, John? How many years you got on?
23.
23. So we're at 53 right now. What about you, Joe? How much you got?
21, 22, somewhere in there.
Wow. And then I don't know the math at this point. I'm kind of skipped past that. I don't remember what it is. But and Don, how much do you have?
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I'm at 22.
So we have somewhere around 100 hours, something like that, 100 years of experience. But it's like we all have this experience that we're sharing, like on podcasts. We're sharing it with you for free. We're telling you. And my thing is, if you're not sharing it back saying, hey, look, let me ask you, how do you do this or that? You're missing out on such a great opportunity to kind of make yourself better. Use that experience. I mean, you sometimes, it makes me laugh when people are complaining in classes about this kind of stuff. And then I look around and I see all these people with such good experience. And I'm like, you're not even talking to these people. You're not even asking them, did you ever have anything like this? What was your response? How did you handle it? Maybe they didn't handle it right. Maybe they're going to say, I screwed this thing up. Learn from that and say, okay, maybe I should do this. So it's definitely something to think about. Yes, sir.
Do you got at least 3 more questions?
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Let's do rapid fire. John, Don, me, different questions.
All right.
Let's go before this episode ends.
Okay.
Wow.
I'll give this one to, this is a good one, but I'll give this to Don Jones. Don, are you ready for this question? So it's a tough one, but here it is. It says, I have a coworker who is very negative, constantly complaining about everything, but she's really good friends with the supervisor. What should I do?
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow.
These may be rapid fire questions, but not rapid answers.
That
is a tough one. I mean,
I think you gotta go. Yeah, not toe to toe isn't the right words here, but you gotta have a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I'm gonna try to be in this profession for 25, 30 years. Can we talk about what's going on for you? That this is why you're that way. And I feel like we've had in our center a few conversations with people over the years who were like that, and then they don't really realize it, right? Like to them, it's their little escape valve of that pressure that they need because it's a hard job, right? And this is the only way that they feel that they can get that pressure valve. And I think that once they're exposed to that and they really realize the negative impact that it's truly having on other people, I think in some ways it reins them in. But you have to have this crucial conversation with people, which is not easy.
It's not an easy thing out there. And Joe, this was your fault. We're doing these quick questions. So,
So Joe gets the
Give
next
Joe a
two.
harder one.
I'm trying to figure out which one I should give him right now. How about this one? How do you suggest I handle an extremely toxic environment, bitter coworkers, supervisors who won't do anything about it, and I have to come to work every day and work a lot of overtime? What should I do?
Absolutely. And the first thing, like it piggybacking off what Don said, is you have to have a conversation. I always try at the lowest level and talking to somebody and getting to know them. One of the interesting things about work relationships, coworker to coworker, coworker to supervisor, supervisor down, whatever, is building relationships with people. And I would say when everybody's negative like that, you try and find out something that you can bring them back to positivity and then have that candid conversation. So a lot of people have kids, or a lot of people like sports, or a lot of people like whatever their hobbies are. And if you can walk up to them and when they're in a bad mood and say, hey, did your kid have any events this weekend? Why don't you tell me about that? And then circle back and get them in a better place for just a few moments, and then talk to them about it to defuse the situation before you even address it, if it's possible. But eventually you have to have that candid conversation. But I would say building relationships with everybody in your center is ultimately important to making sure you can have any conversation at any time.
And it's so funny because all of these are going to be about communication. It's all about opening those lines of communication that we don't want to do sometimes. So here it is.
So my answer is starting with having a conversation.
No, you got a different question coming your way, friend.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And you got an easy question. So, and you're supervisors, you should do this. How do you suggest? No, wait a minute. I'd like to start a ride-along program. Sounds great, but all of our supervisors are very resistant to it. What do I do?
Let's have a conversation.
No,
but it does start with that.
Yeah.
The individual can approach at least one supervisor at a time. Like we always say, gain perspective, hear the other side out, and say, okay, why are we against it? What's the roadblock? What's the hurdle kind of thing? And then if there's still present those roadblocks, then say, okay, I appreciate it, but I'm just letting you know, I'm going now to John, the assistant director, or the deputy director, and having that conversation. But at least the individuals feels that, hey, I had an opportunity to express myself and I'm not just jumping ahead.
And that's what I told somebody who brought this to me and said that exact question. I said, what's the holdup? Why don't they want to do it? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, shouldn't you kind of figure out why they don't want to do it first? I mean, maybe there's
is that a perception, or is that their true, really, they don't
I'm
want
like,
to?
I said, there's got to, and they're like, I said, you can even use me, go back and say, hey, you sent me to this class, Doug's talking about ride-alongs, how important they are. Maybe this is something we should try at our place. I said, why don't you be professional and go back and do that instead of whining, saying, we don't get to do those things. No, go back and be a professional and saying, I'd like to talk to you about why that we need this.
And
Here's what you
bring,
can get from it.
Doug, you talk about this all the time. You send them out with a questionnaire they're supposed to fill out. Bring something like that and say, this is what we could get from it, not just we want to do this.
Mhm.
Here's what we would fill out. Here's what we would learn. Here's how we can apply it to our job. After you figure out why they're against it, then you have some talking points as to why you're for it. Maybe you could sway somebody.
That's great, man. I love these questions. This is great. We're going to be doing this a lot. There's going to be questions coming out, and if Don can join us, he's going to jump back in there again. Whoever come out, we're going to be getting everybody to answer these questions. Viewer submitted questions. So if you've got a question and you're sitting there going, well, I wonder why we would do this or how we do that, then submit the question and we'll be glad to answer it. If you want to use your name, we'll do it. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But just let us know. We're going to do this. We're going to put it up on Facebook and Instagram, all over the place, saying, what's your questions? What do you want to ask us? And we'll be glad to talk about it. Go ahead, Joe.
Can we end with this, Doug?
Yes.
One question I want to add to the list. Do you believe in uniform policy for dispatchers? Or
uniforms?
Do you believe in uniforms for dispatchers? Let's talk about that on the next episode.
Wow. I'm like, okay. Okay. I think a lot of us have had that experience. So that's going to be the next one. So we'll definitely end with that one, but we definitely appreciate everybody stopping by and enjoying this stuff. Joe, tell us about our great social media presence. It's out there big.
We are growing. We're catching fire, and I just am excited as can be about it. Join us on TikTok. We're pushing it hard because there's going to be some fun videos, behind the scenes stuff, but you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on every podcast platform you can imagine. We just passed 13,000 plays in 35 different countries, and that's just on the podcast platform. So thanks for listening to us.
35 countries are listening to this, and that's what it's all about. that many 13,000 podcast plays. That is just excellent, man. I love that kind of stuff. So if you're not listening, I don't know why you're not. I don't know what the hell you're listening to. But if you are listening, please tell your friends and say, hey, join them over there. That's a pretty cool place to go. We'd love to see you on the next broadcast. So thanks very much, Don, for stopping by. John and Joe, appreciate you answering these questions. I love the firing of the questions very quickly, even though I hit Don with the hardest one I've got. I'm sorry. But we definitely appreciate it. Go out and make it a great day because you know, gosh, we will. So have a great one, everybody. Thanks.
Hey, this is Jill, and you've been listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, proudly sponsored by our friends at Zybex.